I'm going to present tonight will be new, but maybe it's an opportunity just to reflect and see how our coaching is going, and take time to maybe just reflect on what we've done in the past year and how we might plan for the year ahead. Okay, so Tony, will you just allow me to click on there?
We see. No, I think you can, Gerard, can you? Because I give you control. See, can you flick on?
No, it's not allowing me to.
Hello.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a while ago since the lads asked me to prepare for this, and it's been hanging over me all over Christmas, so I've been bouncing around in my head. How might I present this either in a new format, or to have a look at what coaches are thinking about in terms of what's new in terms of, say, best practice. So I suppose, first of all, can I say thank you for giving your time this evening. And I suppose I always relish the challenge to do this type of stuff. So as coaches, we're always looking for ways to improve, whether that be reading or listening to podcasts, or maybe attending some of these webinars. And I think it's really been useful, the fact that people can still be at home and still engage in some type of coaching or learning event. So I think this is really important, to engage in this stuff in order to fill us up, and to fill us up for the season ahead in terms of what keeps us energized and motivated as well too. So this is a good time, I suppose, to reflect and to do something different. So maybe tonight you might take some notes, and I'll try and have some interaction. I have a couple of quizzes lined up, and hopefully the technology won't let us down, and we'll be able to interact with one another. So my aim simply tonight is to try and get you to think about your own coaching, and maybe as a result of listening in or hearing some of the research or hearing some of the ideas presented by others, that you might do something different as a result of that in the season ahead. Okay, so just by way of I suppose learning objectives for tonight, so this is what I have planned for the session, and you can see here what I hope to do is I hope to cover these 5 areas, and obviously if there are some other key things that you want me to discuss, maybe you can put it into the chat function, and we might get a chance at the end maybe to pick up on some of those questions or some queries around other aspects of coaching that you might like some either responses around, or if I can point in the right direction. So as you can see, the presentation is covering some topics that I think are important. They're not an exhaustive list in terms of what is best practice. So I've come up with 5 themes that I think are equally as important. I suppose we could have picked so many others as well to discuss. So these are the 5 things that I'd like to present tonight. So what does good look like? So when we talk about best practice, what is best and what does good look like? I want to look at the whole area of research, because a lot of what we do has to be based around evidence, and evidence helps us in terms of the good practice. So the research on why children and young people play sport, and I suppose we tend to know a lot of this already, but it's no harm in maybe reinforcing that aspect of it. Also then, in terms of the climate of development, how we can use this as a framework within our coaching. And then the last 2 things is just the whole area of a coaching culture in your club. And maybe it might trigger some discussion around you with your coaches about what is the culture in your club, or have you a culture around coaching. And then the final piece is just my own ideas around the hallmarks of what I consider successful coaching. Successful doesn't mean necessarily winning, but improving and getting people to a better position than they were previously. So just by way of getting you to think and to reflect, so we maybe begin with you maybe writing down, if you have a page beside you or a post-it, or even put it in the chat if you want to type it into the chat, your answers. 3 questions that I have for you as a coach, and everyone is going to have a different response, and that's what I suppose makes the business of coaching so complex, because we're dealing with people and we're dealing with individuals, and you as an individual will have your own style and your own way of doing something. So 3 questions that I'd like you to think about. What matters to me as a coach? And what I mean by me is you. What matters to you as a coach when you're coaching? What matters to your players? And maybe you could ask them. And finally, what matters to us? And I suppose the collective being the players and the coach. So maybe by way of me responding to these 3 questions as a coach. So what matters to me? Well, for me, you get to know them. That's what matters to me. And I appreciate their efforts. So at the moment, I'm coaching an under 16 B team, and I'm looking at them as players who are giving their all and who will improve at their own level. So I want to get to know them, and I want to appreciate their efforts, because my only goal is to ensure that they play next year as well. The second piece is what matters to our players. Well, I suppose when you ask players, they all want to play, they all want to compete, they all want to be successful, whatever success means to them. They all want to get better, and they want to be part of a team. All of us that are involved in team sports, that's one of the things. There's a real social side of being involved in the team. And then there has to be a certain amount of fair play for them. Do they get to play? Is your training organised? And do you praise their effort? And the final thing then for me is what matters to us. Well, I think there is no us unless you involve them, or unless you involve the input from the players, input from parents, and input from coaches. So it can't just be the coach and the players. It has to be a collective around the 3 of them. So that brings us on to the first element of our topic tonight. So what does good look like? So I believe that these 3 things are really important for players, and it's all about players. First of all, it's not really about you, the coach. It's not really about me. As coaches, we serve players. That's the job that we do. That's the role that we play. We serve players. We try and improve players. We try and make them better. So generally, players want you to know 3 things, or they want to know 3 things about you, the coach. Do you care about them? What I mean by do you care about them? Do you care about them as a person, not necessarily as a player? Do you really care about them? Do you really care that they're there every week? Or do they not just turn up for training, or do you just turn up for it? Do you actually really care that they're there, and they're there totally and focused on what you're doing? Can I trust him or her? So can they trust you? Can they talk to you? Do you have empathy if they happen to say something to you that you're not going to respond in a negative way towards them? And can you make them better? So I think in all my experiences of coaching and talking to other coaches in Gaelic sport and Gaelic games, I think this is true. If you do nothing else but focus on these 3 things, I think that you'll have done a good start. When I coach my players, I ask myself these 3 questions. Do I care about them? Can they trust me? Can I make them better? Because we're in the business of learning. And if you're in the business of learning, I think a teacher once said, to teach John Latin, you must know John and you must know Latin. So for us to develop players, we must know John and we must know our sport as well. So what is good coaching? I suppose it's a question that's asked a lot from people who are involved in coaching, maybe as a professional capacity, and somebody involved in learning and training. What is good coaching? And I suppose at the heart of coaching is this idea that you put people first. And I suppose it sounds great in theory, but sometimes it can be hard to put into practice. So it's the ability to see beyond the horizon. It's the ability to see beyond just that person in the field with the ball at that particular time. That you can see the potential. You can see where a player could get to with hard work, with lots of coaching and encouragement and support at home or whatever. It's also the skillfully mastering the art of persuasion, because as we know, maybe as players ourselves, sometimes we went along to training and we mightn't have liked to do particular things because they're tough, but we would have been persuaded by our coach to do them, to go the extra mile, to do the extra things. So that's a great skill as the coach, is the art of persuasion, getting people to do stuff maybe that they mightn't necessarily want to do, and also coaching is an action. It's not a position. So when you hear people saying, "Oh, I've taken up the position as coach," whatever, it's not really a position. It's the action of coach. It's what you do. So the benefits of coaching go far beyond helping people become better players. Coaching positively and profoundly impacts on all aspects of people's lives. And that's what good coaching is. And if you see the little acronym on the screen there, it says the people acronym spells out the answer. What is good coaching? So it's about people, and people change people for the good, and leveraging, I suppose, the full potential. Coaching should be first and foremost person-centered. So we should be focusing on people first. So this is what the acronym stands for. So people are player-centered. What does it actually mean? It means that as a coach, I make the children or the players that I have in front of me feel valued. So I don't demean them. I praise them for when they merit praise, and I give them feedback that will make them want to get better. Empowering. So how we empower somebody is by asking questions. And you can't empower somebody if you're always going to be telling them what to do, because what you're doing is you're giving them instructions and they're just following instructions. So to empower somebody is to ask them to think for themselves about what's happening in the session, or for feedback. So we all want thinking players. So empowering players is really, really important. The O is organised, and I think a book by Tim Healy called "Can You Manage?" I think it's a good few years ago now. I think he managed Wicklow senior team and Cork. He's originally from Cork. He's a lecturer in UCD, and he talked about the players' worst pet hates as a coach, and by far the top was coach not being organised. So coaches being organised is a real quality to have as a coach. So my coach is well prepared, comes, sets the stuff out, and is not doing stuff on the fly. Positive. So I'm praised for my effort, and sometimes we think that maybe we should be praising all the time, but you have to praise with some area for improvement as well. So we can't just say well done, because well done doesn't mean anything if you keep repeating it. So what was well done, and what could you do to make it even better? So praise is important, but using it in a meaningful way is far more important. And then learning. So in our training, we should be trying to achieve learning something new every time. It doesn't have to be the whole session, has to be new, but at least one new thing in the training. That really engages the players, it energizes the players. And the last piece there, which links into the learning, is they can't wait to come back, because your training will be engaging and energetic. So I think this is a good framework that could help us put people first. So when you think about people, there's a very good model to be thinking about. So again, maybe time to reflect, and I suppose as coaches, with time being precious, I suppose we maybe don't take time to reflect on our own practices, but this might be a good time for you to do that now. When we think about reflection, there are different types of reflection, and there's lots written about it. And so just there's the three areas that I've come across, and each has a different purpose. and can benefit coaches' reflection in different ways. So we've got reflection on action. So that's about thinking on what you did and review on the information on how you did something about in the future. And then there's retrospective reflection on action. So this little exercise I'm going to get you to do now is a sort of retrospective reflection. And then there's reflection in action. So that's when you're thinking about something as you're doing it, or you're thinking about it while you're doing it as well. So maybe have a think about these three questions now. And again, this is a personal thing, a personal reflection. What are the three best things I like most about myself as a coach? So take a minute to write down three things, the best things about myself as a coach. And maybe this might be a good opportunity maybe to ask some of your players, what do they think about you as a coach? Because you might have a different view of what you think about yourself as a coach. But anyway, we'll just do this now for what are the three best things you think about yourself as a coach? What are the three best things I like least about myself as a coach? So there may be things that you think aren't so good, that maybe you could, areas for improvement. And this isn't really about you, but this is about maybe another coach that you've seen or heard or whatever. Who is the happiest coach I know? And that might be somebody that you've heard or seen in the last year or a long time ago. So think about those three questions, jot them down for yourself, and that is a good starting point in terms of reflective practice as a coach. And that's a modern way of looking at ourselves in terms of reflection. How are we doing, Tony?
Doing very well, Gerard.
Tony out there?
Great, yes.
Maybe he's not.
What? No, I'm here, Gerard.
So
you hear me?
What I want you to do is, I'm going to try a little quiz here, and I'm going to come out of this page in a second. But if you can maybe use some sort of technology to try and engage you. So on your phone, what I want you to do is just go into Google and type in Kahoot.it. Okay, so just Google Kahoot.it.
Gerard, you're way off. You hear me, Gerard?
I can, yeah. Something just dropped there for a second.
You went off there for a wee minute. You had the Kahoot page up, but I don't know what happened after that. Your presentation is down.
Okay, I'll just put it up here now. So, can everybody see that? Yeah, can you see that, Tony?
Yes, Kahoot, yes.
Yeah, so if you can sign up to Kahoot.it and then sign in, and then what I will do is I will give you a game pin, so you can see this should come up on your phone. I'll give you a game pin, and it'll be a number that'll come up on the screen, and then you enter in that number, and then you can stick in your name, so a nickname, Tony, Jer, whatever you want to call yourself, stick it in, and then we'll start a little quiz that will come up on the screen, and there'll be a few questions that will appear, and you'll have 4 choices, and you will pick your choice on your phone. It'll be red, yellow, green, whatever, blue, whatever it will be colored. There'll be a question, and you'll have to respond to one of those questions within 20 seconds, okay? So the first little quiz that I'm going to do is got 5 questions, and the questions are all based on research around why children play sport. Okay?
Gerard,
so
what do you...
I'm just going to stop this here now, and I'm going to bring up Kahoot now. Hopefully we can see it. Okay. So, can you see that, Tony?
Yes, do you hear me? Hello, Gerard? Gerard?
Mm-hmm.
I lost you there. Hello?
Yeah.
There's David's asking what's the pin. He's texting what's the pin.
Okay. Just I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's your end or my end where the
It's not going.
connection is. Just 1 second here, right? I'll try this again. Okay, sorry about this, folks. Typical technology, let you down when you need it. Okay, so there's a pin loading on the screen. Can you see that, Tony?
Yes, there it is. There, coach is there now.
Yeah.
Game pin. So hold on now. Hold on.
5222502.
Hold on. To give everybody.
Stick the pin in and put your name in, and hopefully you'll see the names coming up. Lovely. Okay, we have a few bodies there coming in now. Lovely.
Hold on, wee man. That's brilliant. That's great. We have some numbers coming in there.
Yeah, very good. We'll give another few seconds just so we can. There's a prize, by the way, for the winner here. So might have a few coaching books to give out, Tony. You'll have all the registrations at a later stage, and I can send them on to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're at 70, so maybe there's a few other people that maybe are on their phone and maybe aren't able to get into to the thing. So what we might do is we might just see if we can start the quiz anyway. Okay, so if you can't get in, you still see the questions coming up on the screen here anyway, and we hopefully will be able to keep it going. All right, so up it comes, and you'll start seeing these questions now. As I said, they're around why children play sport. Okay, so number one is coming up, and young people play sport to hang around with their friends. So you can pick one of those. So you have about 12 seconds to get your answer in.
What do you mean you pick? What do you pick, Gerard?
You press it on your phone. So you press one of the positions on your phone. Okay, and there we go. So that shows you where the right answers are. So 44%. We didn't have a good start there, but we'll say beginner's luck on this one. This is percentage, and this is research from New Zealand around why children play sport. Okay, so we're going to go to the next question, and here we go. So, Gerard, and that's not me, by the way, because I'm not on this. So Gerard's in the lead, and Sock is second, and Ilse is third. Okay, so we're moving to the second question. Here we go. Young people play because their parents make them. So is it 12%, 18%, 26%, or 34%? Okay, so we have a mixed range here, and it's 26%. So maybe you thought it was a lower figure, but it's actually 26%. Okay, so we'll see how the scoreboard is going. So Gerard's still in the lead. Good man, Gerard, and Sean Mack is next, and Aaron is third. Okay, we're moving to the third question. So here we go. Children play for fun. So what do we think? Is it 76, 82, 44, or 29? Okay, 5 seconds to go. 75 answers in, that's great. Okay, so it was a toss-up between 76 and 82. Okay, and we'll We'll do a little review at the end in terms of where this research is coming from, just so that you're not thinking that I'm making this up. Okay. So let's see, is Gerard still in the lead? Yeah, he's still up there. Sean Mack is still on second. And obviously, the quicker you submit your answer, the higher the points you get also in this. So if you're taking all day to answer the question, you're going to be further down the line. Okay, so and Doc moved up the highest. He moved up 17 spots in that, so he's the highest climber in this round. Okay, we're on to question number 4. Children play to physically challenge themselves. So again, here we go. Is it 76%, 66%, 34%, or 29%? What do you think it is? 5 seconds to go. Okay, again, 29% is the answer on this one. And again, a bit of a toss-up between 34 and 29%. Okay, so let's see how our scoreboard is going. Oh, Marcus has just jumped ahead there, and Connor has moved up 24 places to be the highest climber. So there's a bit of a contest here now for the final round. So fingers by the buzzer for the last one. So this is the 5th question. Play to learn or practice a new skill. What do you think the answer is to this? So is it 4%? Is it 32%? Is it 22%? Or is it 45%? 5 seconds to go. Okay, and again, a range of answers here. Not always that straightforward. Maybe we think children play for particular reasons, and maybe the research is leading us to rethink maybe that as well. Okay. So let's have a look and see who's on top spot here. So the first 3 here we'll get prizes to. So Kenny, BJ, and top spot is G-Man. Okay, brilliant. Well done, three players, and runners up there. I just missed who the runners up was, but Tony will get your details, and we'll get a few coaching books off to you in the next few days. So thanks very much for participating in that, and we'll just maybe come out of that for a second here.
That was excellent, Jim. That was excellent. Really.
Okay, so let me just unshare and I'll reshare the screen again here. We bring back up our presentation, and I suppose it's the best of a bad lot in terms of a little bit of interaction. But okay, so this is the actual research here, just by way of who are interested in finding out maybe some of the what is the research telling us in terms of why children are involved in sport and why they play sport. And I suppose when we look at it, first of all, the research is overwhelming, telling us that young people play sport for fun. That's what it's telling us. This is a piece of research from New Zealand sport, and it's interesting that whenever we look at this topic, it's pretty consistent across the world in terms of why children play sport, whether it's in Ireland, Australia, England, New Zealand. This research is pretty consistent when they look at these particular topics and areas, why they play. Fun, however, is a bit abstract, okay? And it can be very difficult to define at times, because as adults, sometimes we equate fun with sort of silliness or maybe amusement or sort of lightheartedness or maybe entertaining or whatever. And if you were to actually look at your at a dictionary or look for a definition of it, that's what'll come up. Okay, so in part of preparing for tonight's presentation, I wanted to just give you some research, some current research around this, around fun. And this particular researcher, it's an American researcher that I follow from Washington, called Amanda Visk, And she wrote a research paper in 2015, and that actually was presented recently at I Coach Kids, and it's called the Fun Integration Theory. Now, I'm not going to bore you with all of the research in it, but I'm just going to summarize it for you to give you an idea. And what she actually did was, sometimes as coaches, we ask, how do we know children are having fun? And we might say, oh, they were smiling, or they were laughing, or they were coming off giggling off the field. But the word fun is complicated, but it is pivotal for why children play in sport. So we should know more about it. So she decided to be the first person to ask young people what fun meant. So her results blown the lid off what we thought we knew. She asked 150 players, sports players, from the ages of 8 to 18. She asked 50 coaches, she asked 50 parents approximately, to complete the following statement. One thing that makes playing sport fun for players is, and then they were to follow on in that statement. What was that one thing or whatever? So the researchers came up with thousands of different ideas of what fun means to children, and they analysed these and found a total of 81 individual determinants of what makes fun, including things like trying your best, having my parents watch me at games, or getting photographs taken. So these were things that children put down as what was fun. Now, as adults, maybe we don't think these things are fun, but this is the important thing for children. So the researchers then asked the players and the coaches and the parents to have a look at these 81 statements and give them a value from 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being excellent, of how valid or how vital they were to fun. So 5 being brilliant. So they give them all these statements and said, okay, scale them 1 to 5 in terms of fun. Okay, so all of these statements could be 5, all could be 1, and each statement could be ranked individually. So a child could put 5 in them all, or 1 in them all, or whatever. So there wasn't any parameters within it. So the research offers some really important takeaways for us as coaches, as parents, and I suppose everybody involved in supporting children in sport. There are many determinants that constitute fun in the mind of young people. First of all, 81, who would have ever thought of 81, that they would come up with 81? So when these factors were assessed to gauge the relevant importance, trying hard, positive team dynamics, positive coaching came out on top. They were the things that came out on top. And then there were 8 others, like learning and improving and game time and practice and team friendship and team rituals and even things like gear, okay, sports gear. So it's important to stress that even though coaches have decided that, when sport gets real, right, around 14, and there's a value shifts according to to the players or whatever, not even those who are on the real teams at 14 or 15 or 16, they're working as hard and taking it as seriously as those who were asked when they were 8 about the things that make it fun. So it's interesting, as we prone to believe that winning and scoring would be high on the adult agenda of what fun is. It is probably for adults and important for their children. However, whilst winning may be a determinant of what makes the experience fun for children, it doesn't make the top list in terms of what's important. In fact, it falls in the middle section of those list of 100 or of those 81. So when rated for the most important to the least. Okay, so she came up with this theory called fun maps, and this notion around fun integration theory. Okay, so simplified, this is what it means. So what fun looks like in the mind of a child? Well, first of all, it's a 3-letter word, right? It's pivotal in being involved in sports, as the research shows you. So this is another way maybe of understanding it. So it has to be at the center. And I suppose the theory of the fun maps can be simplified into these 6 concepts. So fun is developmental, right? Which means it has to be a sequence, it has to be a stage. And how do I, as a coach, create that? How do I create that development that makes it fun? Okay, fun has to be physical because it is sport. So is competing being active, lots of touches of the ball, being constantly engaged? I can control that as a coach too. The verbal can be fun or not be fun. So I control the fun as a verbal experience in the direction, in the feedback, in how my tone is presented to players. I too have control of the verbal. Then there's the emotional side. So as a coach, do I listen to the players? Because that creates an emotional experience, and that building of trust and confidence is also captured in the fun. So fun is also the social experience with the other players in your group, with you, the coach, and the player. So the team sports provide lots more of this too than maybe an individual sport. And the final piece then is the environmental, and that's the well-organized practice and games. And all of those can be influenced by the coach. So that's the science to the practice. That's what it looks like. Her mind maps look in terms of fun for children. Now, it's not always easier said than done, and it doesn't always have to be about a smiley face, because some children like to work hard, like to come off that they've known they've really tried as hard as they possibly could. They mightn't feel at the time that it was fun, but at the end, there's that feeling of satisfaction, and that might be their fun. Or it could be that they're just interacting with other children there. That's the social fun for some other children. So the next time you're training your group, ask them what was fun. Explain why it was fun for them. And you'll probably get things that you never maybe thought they would say about being involved in sport at all. Here is something that I came across recently, and I think that it's a tremendous model. Again, this is sort of adapted from Sport New Zealand Sport, or Sport New Zealand, and it's called the good coaching spine. And when you think about the spine, you think about something that's strong, you think that's something that keeps us upright, okay? And I think this is a brilliant model that can be presented to coaches to create a climate. There's two climates here when we look at this, and they're from two different perspectives. When we think about the climate of control and direction, and the climate of development and performance. So at the center of the model is the player, their needs, and then on the right hand side you have the coach, his attitudes and behaviors, both positive and negative. So they're two extremes. And when we think about the spine and using that word or that acronym, so the spine supports, it's positive, it's individual, it's the needs of the child, and it's the environment, and it feeds back into what the research tells us. So when we think about, are you a coach that is focused on effort and improvement as opposed to, did we win the match or did we lose the match? Okay, so that's the balance that you have to strike. So where's your behaviors? Are your behaviors on the right or on the left? Okay, everyone matters or only the best matter? So here is the connection piece for the child. Where are your behaviors and your attitudes here? Is it a strict adult control? Are you giving all the direction, or are children allowed to take control and to be involved in some of the decisions and be part of the learning process? Is it punishment or learning through play? Do we not allow them the game because they've done something, or do we allow them the game as a way of developing their skills? Is it single focused? So at this particular, when we think about children that maybe try other sports, it's a great way for them to learn about, different things in terms of variety and a balance within their school. Or is it just training all year round? Somebody texted me last night and said, our under 12s are training. We have an overzealous strength and conditioning coach. We're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he wants them out Saturday and Sunday. For under 12s? Surely that's very much a climate of control and direction. So this to me is a very, very useful way for coaches to be thinking in terms of what is best practice for me, the coach. And this tool is designed to help coaches understand how their impact on child's coach or child's sports experience in a positive or in a negative way. So maybe if we look at some of the pictures that are here, some of our values as a coach, and we're not saying that coaching is not about being perfect, because none of us are perfect. So at times we sometimes slip, and sometimes we need to be reaffirmed, or sometimes we need to refocus or reflect on what we're actually doing. So we have to get into or get away from the notion of perfection, first of all, because we're always learning and we're always changing. Sometimes, someday we go out and we make a mistake, we've done something that we shouldn't have done, and we try the next time we go out not to do it. Okay, so your values direct you towards what you feel is important. So if you feel that being a good sports person is important, you'll encourage your children to go and shake hands with the opposition. If you don't, well, then it won't be a priority for you. So those values have been instilled by significant people in your own life, your parents, your teachers, family, the wider community. So what we as coaches deem as important, our players will grow to value as important too. Okay, so that's hugely important. Likewise, on the negative side of that, if there are values that are reflected in us, can possibly be reflected in our players. So building a strong value system in your coaching and practicing it will give direction and build a strong culture within your team. Okay, and we've often heard this word culture. What does that actually mean? So players will learn so quickly. So as a coach, make sure they are learning well, because a coach's attitude is also reflected in the players. So these are just some of the behaviors that we might see. The top ones are more positive than the bottom ones. So they present behaviors. So we might think we are doing these, but in actual fact, maybe we're not. So in order to grow as a coach, we must be aware of our own behaviors and our own values also as a coach. Okay. So I came across this, and I hope I'm sure there's probably a few Elvis fans in the house tonight. I know Tony is a great Elvis fan. Blue suede shoes, I think, was his favorite number. Tony?
I'm not so sure about that, Gerard. Yeah. I'm not so sure about that.
Ah, you're not so sure, no? Okay. Anyway, I thought this was brilliant because I came across it in preparation for this webinar. I just think it's fantastic. When you think about it and you read it, values are like fingerprints. Nobody's are the same, but you leave them all over everything you do. Now think of your fingerprints. What are they leaving all over the place in terms of you as a coach? I think that's so powerful when you think of the fingerprints. Not necessarily as a coach, but what about as a parent? So your values are like your fingerprints. Nobody's ever seen, but you leave them all over everything you do. And I think that's really, really powerful when we think about that as a value, as coaching values, but just values in general as that we think about. Okay, so these are just some of the values that we often hear about as players, as coaches, in our workplace. So that leads us on to this values piece, and they stand for what guide us and the way we live our lives and the decisions we make. So values can be defined as something that we hold dear to us, okay? Things that are qualities that we consider to be of worth or whatever. So obviously are shaped by your influence, your background, your education, all of it, your wider social network and everything around that. So just maybe how they might link into your coaching. So if you were to ask me what my values might be, I'm going to give you maybe an example here. So let's look at these sort of core values. These are some of the things that I feel particularly drawn to, and this is what they mean to me as a coach. So integrity. So what does that actually mean? So to me, what it means is know and do what is right. So turning up on time, being there all the time, trying to do the right thing during the game. That you're being fair to people. That you'll say what that you're going to carry out something, that you're going to do it. Respect. So for me, that's about treating others the way I would like to be treated, or treating the children, my own children, the way I would treat somebody else's child, whether it be giving them feedback, whether it be helping them, whether it be part of the team. Care. So we have each other's back and we give each other aid as team. So we look after each other. So if you're on a team, it's no good me being I on my own. I have to depend on others. So we have to be helpful to support others. Pride. So we all are very proud of a number of things. We're proud of our name, most of us. Okay, we're proud of where we're from, and we're proud of our club. So and that's sort of something that we can instill as coaches, is that we are the best at what we do. That's not being arrogant. It's just you're proud of where you're from. Humility, and humility doesn't mean that you have to choose to put others first. It just means that if you do well, that you acknowledge it, and you don't be boastful about it. That you can take it and say, well, yeah, we did well, but there's always areas for improvement. And then no excuses. So we're always on time and we're always prepared to do stuff, because if you're going to make excuses for stuff, you're always going to make excuses for why things didn't happen or whatever. And I always like this one, because I know Tony was a great footballer in his day. He had lots of aggression, and I think aggression is a great quality and a great value to have in your team. Is playing with real passion and enthusiasm. It doesn't mean to be dirty. It just means to be aggressive, that you really, really want to get the ball and you really want to try your hardest at something. So these are just some of the things that I value as a coach myself. Okay, so that leads us into, I suppose, the next part of tonight's webinar, which is this whole notion around culture. And the word culture actually derives from a Latin term, cultur, which means to tend to the earth or grow, or cultivation. So when you think about culture and you think about the meaning of it, is to grow. So our job as coaches is to try and nourish your club, to nourish your players, to nourish yourself as a coach. So what is your culture in your club? Is it one of growth, or is it one of nurture and cultivation, or is it something else? So could you define the culture in your club? And the culture is an expression of the team's values and attitudes and beliefs. Okay, it determines whether, for example, the team is focused on fun, or is it on winning, or is it about personal accomplishment, or is it on team success, or is it more around trying to develop? So whether you've done anything to influence or develop it, there is a culture in your club. Whether you like it or not, there is a culture. And broadly speaking, it's developed or adapted in two ways. One, it's left to its own devices. Your players will build their own shared culture based on their behaviours and personalities of individual members. So a club's culture that develops naturally proves to be the strongest, but there are some significant strings attached to that. There's a risk that the culture could be shaped by a core group of people, and sometimes even around maybe a single dominant individual at the expense of everyone else, which can lead to alienation times. Or number two, which is more effective and less risky, is where for the development of your club and your coaching team to take an active role in actually shaping the club culture. So by holding meetings, by discussing with people, by engaging with players and parents of an atmosphere that they would like around here. So what values and behaviours do you believe are important? What standards do you accept? What don't you accept? And you have a discussion around it, and that's sort of the experiences that are around there. So I remember talking to a friend of mine just before Christmas, and he said he had just taken over as the coaching officer in his club in Wexford, and he had spent time talking to the youth coaches and parents, and he convinced them what success was going to be like in the club, and that all the players were going to be really skillful and be able to perform at a competent level up to minor level. That was his vision of success for the club, and everything else was going to be a bonus. And he said to the parents and the coaches, he says, and if you think we're going to do anything else, or that we're going to be hell-bent on winning the under-12 matches or championship, then you're sadly mistaken. And I thought that was a brilliant way of getting the message out about the culture he wanted to change in the club, because all they were focused in on was, would the under-12s win the championship this year? And by the time some of those players got to minor, half of them weren't playing, or maybe they hadn't been developed. Their potential hadn't been developed even further than they could have been. So that's the culture. So 2 questions for you to pause and think about. What is the culture of your club right now? Can you say you have a culture? There is one, but can you define it? And how will you, or how could you as a coach influence it? So have you brought it up with your club? And maybe in the chat you might stick something in there if you want to about the culture, and Tony might come back to us maybe at a later point around that. How are we doing for time, Tony?
Oh, we're okay, Gerard. We're 25 past 8, whatever.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so 2 questions there. How could you as a coach maybe influence it? You might just maybe pop that in the chat. And as we're doing that, we're going to get back to Kahoot. So I'm going to come out of this presentation. This will be your chance now to win a prize and to think about some of these questions maybe. So your little Kahoot.it, and let me see if I can bring up the next little quiz for you here, and hopefully we will be able to see if that comes up. Okay. So Tony, will you keep me right here? And so the next quiz
you have a screen. You have a screen up there now.
And does that say the top challenges coaches need help with?
No. Yes, it does. It does. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to be going to this little quiz. So this is a piece of research that I carried out on nearly 180 coaches, and there's your little pin. So it's 5096017. So if you want to tip your name in, and away we go again. And if you've put in a pseudonym name, or a name that we can't track, you mightn't be able to win the prize. So anyway, we'll get going here. Okay, we're starting to get a few more bodies in there.
Come on ahead, coaches. Get signed up. You can't, if you're not in, you can't win.
That's it, Tony.
And see, for those first 3, GM I think was first, second was BJ, and third was Kenny. Could you in your text box put in your email address, your right name and email address? I don't know who you are. Okay, you'll not get Gerard's manuals or books if you don't. Let yourself be known.
Okay, thanks, Tony. We might just tip away here now. So we've over 60 on, so I'll head away here. So we're going to start here, and again, this is some questions around why or what particular things coaches find as challenging or that they need help with. Okay, so we're going to hit the start there on that, and here we go. So, top challenges the coaches need help with. So this is the top challenge that coaches need help with. So is it dealing with discipline, managing mixed abilities, using questions to coach, and planning the session or the season? What do you think? Okay, very good. So managing mixed abilities, yeah. There was a split there between that and planning the season and the session. Okay, very good. So we'll see who's first off the buzzer on that one. So we have Rebel there, Kenny and Lob on the podium so far. Very good, all. So we'll move on to the next question. So second greatest challenge coaches need help with. Here we go. Dealing with discipline, planning the session and the season, working positively with excited parents, using questions to coach. Okay, so we have an array of answers here, yeah. So planning the season or planning the session and the season was the second top challenge that coaches find they need help with. Okay, so when we think about that, we think, how do we maybe find the time to use that in a way that helps us be better planned for the session and for the season. Okay, so let's see how we're getting on here. So Kenny comes up, and Kerry drops into second. Very good. And Macker moves up 18 places, so he's the highest climber at the moment. So we're moving on to the next third question. There's only 4 questions in this round. So the third greatest challenge coaches need help with. So again, dealing with discipline, communication, and feedback, planning the session and the season, and using questions to coach. 5 seconds to go. Okay. 36, very good, very good. So communication and feedback, yeah, that's the third greatest challenge coaches need help with. Let's see how we're getting on the leaderboard. So Kerry is up top, well done. Porrick and Lane then coming up in second and third. So our final round then, and Michael G moves up 26 places, so good man, Michael. And the last round, here we go. The final question. So the fourth greatest challenge coaches need help with. Off we go. So is it observations, skills, spotting and fixing, staying motivated, spelled wrong by the way, using questions to coach, and working positively with excited parents? Okay, so yeah, observation, skills, spotting and fixing. Okay, so let's see who's on the podium here for webinar number 2 of 2022. Saucepan is number 3. Porrick C is number 2. And on top spot, we have Kerry. Okay, so again, if you want your prize, please put in the chat your name and your email address so that Tony can get in contact with you, and we can get you off those couple of coaching resources for you for the year ahead. Thanks very much, coaches, for that, and we will now maybe just resume back to the last couple of slides we have here for the presentation. Okay. Knock these off here. Okay, lovely. Okay, and here we go. Okay, we're back on track there, Tony, yeah?
Yes, Gerard, brilliant. All back up again, that's brilliant.
Thank you. So this was just the research that some of those questions were taken from. So that was in 2018, and these were the top 6 challenges coaches need help with. Starting, as we said, on coaching mixed ability groups, and that's always a challenge when you've got an array of ages, but not only ages, but you've got even within a cohort of players of the same age, you could have a whole range of levels of ability. So that is a challenge for coaches. And just one of the ways that I think you can overcome those challenges, if you've got additional helpers, mentors, parents there, I think station-based coaching is a great way to actually work on coaching that mixed ability groups. Okay, planning the season and the session, and the session what came in second. Communication, feedback, observation skills, dealing with discipline in your team, and using questionings as a form of coaching. So that was conducted over 180 coaches, and it was interesting when we conducted that research. 88% of those coaches that were surveyed had actually done some formal coach education, whether it be the foundation course. So there is a lot of challenges that coaches need help with, and I suppose that's the reason why we put these webinars and courses on, to try and help and respond to some of these challenges. Okay, so that brings me into the last section on tonight's session, and it's around the hallmarks of successful coaching. So finally, these are my top 10 hallmarks of successful coaching. That doesn't mean that you're going to win anything, but I just think that they're very, very important. So first, and it's creative practice. What does that mean? Well, it's really about trying to make people confident about improving their competence and encouraging creativity in individual ways of performing. It can be very simply done at the beginning of a training session. Everybody gets a ball, and you ask the players to show me something they can do while on the move with the ball. That's thinking about the players deciding how they're going to do it, but it's also getting them to try different things, whether it be a solo on the left or the right, or a dummy solo, or whatever it happens to be. It's about getting them to think, and that's the creative piece. So the key message for coaches is that unstructured play, and we should celebrate that. And we should also have a time in our training where we allow them to express themselves that way. So we want that creative behavior, which encourages in our training sessions. The next thing then is this whole idea of being able to use both sides of the body. So I suppose it's indicative of us that we use and we get the brain to communicate, so that that we use left and right, and we do it alternative rather than maybe trying to do 10 on the right all the time and 10 on the left. So we do it left, right, rather than strong, weak. We just call it right, left, left, and we get that in sort of the deliberate practice side of what we're doing. The next thing then is quality practice, and that links back into this whole idea of being organized. So practice is the opportunity to get better. So ensure that you always have your session planned, and at least one new thing. And we looked at that previously. Learning is about doing something new, but also about trying to improve on the skills that we already have. So you don't have to have all the training sessions new, but maybe just one little thing. So it acquires good game habits. And if you allow players to have bad habits, then it takes double the effort for the coach to try and undo those learned bad habits. Okay, so you want to ensure that when you're teaching a technique, that you teach it properly, and that if they're not doing it the way that it should be done, that you help them to correct that technique with quality practice. Oh, the next thing then is, again, and that's your leading into your skill development. So your notion about observing, being able to spot, and maybe the word fix isn't right here, but maybe we should be thinking about how you would support or repair or help maybe in the technique of the skill by giving feedback. So we're always looking, we're always seeing what things look good, but what things don't look so good, and we can then, as a coach, That's where our coaching eye comes in order for us to help and to provide some sort of a support for the player. So motivation and communication, I think the success of any coach is determined by their ability to effectively communicate. So ask yourself these questions. Do you encourage players to speak up? Do you ask them questions? Do you pay attention to your own body language when you're given instruction? Do you give instruction or do you give feedback? And how do you get better at that? And do you focus on the outcome or the effort in your feedback? So, you know, what was good? How was it good? Do you focus on maybe the work that's done that isn't always the glamorous stuff, like maybe somebody chasing back to get back and track somebody or to cover somebody to mark or cover space? You know, they might have ran 50 yards, but do you spot that and do you praise that effort for that? Because if you praise that, they're going to continue to do it for you. Whereas if you don't, it may go unnoticed. So developing this independence. So developing the independence involves players being actively involved in the learning process. So that's asking questions. So coaches must master the skill of posing questions, and the questions have to be in such a way that they're not closed doors, but actually open doors and invite us to respond to them. So there is an art in asking questions and maybe the first question you mightn't get any response. You might have to come up with 3 or 4 in order for your children to start engaging with you. And then we've got discipline without being demeaning. So for me, here is teaching the players to conduct themselves appropriately. So when you set standards or you set rules, you have to be consistent yourself as a coach. So rather than maybe yelling or punishing, maybe ask, what's the best you can do? Or are you trying your hardest? Or your players should know what you expect if you establish rules. So if you have rules or basic rules, 1 or 2, 3 rules, then they know what the rules are, and there's an expectation that they must meet, and then there are consequences every time if they break those rules. And this is where the consistency come in. So you have to be consistent, not just sometime, every time. So the behavior of our players will quickly change if you're consistent with your discipline. So discipline is the glue that holds everything else together. That's these characteristics of an effective coach, these 7 hallmarks of successful coaching. So being creative, when we think about that, we're thinking about developing the player, the bilateral, both sides, quality practice. When we think of games, learning, so that's our skill development. We think about the motivation and communication and developing independence. We think about the questioning. This piece is around and that's the self-learning environment. That's what we want to try and create within it. And they're sort of the key hallmarks of successful coaching that I think are really, really important. I'm going to maybe finish on this little video that I have here, and I suppose coaching is the most, sports coaching is one of the most important ways coaches can influence in a positive way young people beyond, I suppose, the development of tactics or the physical or skills associated with the game. So a coach can ignite a child's curiosity, can teach positive social skills and team skills, can promote self-awareness and foster resilience. All of those encourage creativity. All of those things that we feel as human beings are really important. So this is just to say thank you to all the coaches that are on tonight, because you do more than just develop players. So hopefully this little video will work for you here, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it. You hear
Players and coaches, a timeless partnership at the heart of our game. I was a player once, and I remember my special coach. The coach who saw something unique in me, as a young lad and as a player. And that was my first step on the ladder of self-belief. You taught me what the game was about. But the partnership was more than that. It was about enjoyment and gratitude, respect, commitment and discipline, integrity and passion, leadership and character. These were the values that you helped to instill in me, the values that made me the player I became, and the person I am now. Gramagat. For the time and energy you invested in me. Thank you for teaching me how. Thank you for being the role model you were. Thank you for your patience when I struggled, and for allowing me to make mistakes. Now, I am a coach. It won't be easy to walk in your shoes, but I want to give back to the game that we love. I want to contribute to something that was there before me and will be there after. I'm passing it on. Coach on.
That's me, Tony. There are just some contact details there. If everybody wants to get in touch. So, if there's any questions, yeah, you can fire away, Tony.
Are there any questions, coaches? There, absolutely a brilliant session. Does anybody want to come in? I'm just looking on the chat bar here. I can't. A lot of positive feedback, Gerard. Thanking you so much for what I'll do here. Now I hope I can do this. I'm allowing the mic. I'm allowing the mic on for all the coaches here in attendance. We've had guts of 120 on live the other night. Does anybody want to come in, put up their hand, or unmute yourself? I think I have you all unmuted. You can come in there if you want to, or you want to put some in the text box. You want to ask Gerard? Did I hear somebody saying hello? Does anybody want to come on at all? They're all put the thumbs up here. Any questions in the chat box? A few of the questions there you were asking was this session. As you know, the session was recorded. It'll be up on the Ulster J YouTube channel in a few days' time. Last week's session that Ryan Mellon delivered, I noticed it went up there a few days ago, so that's already up now. We have staff within the Ulster Council who get them videos up for presentations up for, so I know that was up there a couple of days ago, so you can go on and see that one. And Gerard's here will be up now in a few days. So if there's no questions, could the coaches that won the prizes tonight make sure you put in your email addresses, and then I'll try to get in touch to get your address, and we'll get these books of Gerard O'Connor, because they are top class books, because I have them. So anything else to be saying? Only everybody's just thanking you so much, Gerard. I think we'll leave it at that.
Tony, there's a compliment there to you about your techie. So take that, Tony. You're a tech whiz. So, one question there. I saw one question there from somebody.
Okay, go ahead.
Just any advice? Two questions, maybe. One around mixed abilities, and the other one was any advice on taking a team that you don't know. That's a really good question, David. It's always difficult at the beginning when you don't know a team, because in order for coaches to really engage with players, you need to build rapport. And for me, one of the key things as a coach, you need to get to know them. And sometimes you can do that outside of the pitch, outside of training. I know that as a coach myself, I always would have organised some sort of a social event, and obviously COVID has I suppose derailed a lot of that, whether it be going, I used to bring some of the younger groups that I was, just maybe on a hill walk, where you're talking and you're getting to know the players that you have. that could be just a Saturday morning, or it could be, it could be going for just going down to the field and doing a bit of team building type of stuff, where you're doing stuff that is not football or hurling, that maybe is little challenges, or you're getting them to come up with little exercises. And there's lots of team building challenges that you could come up with. So to me, do something outside of the sport that gets to know the players by way of finding out their names, finding out one or two things about them. That's the first thing. I remember listening to Liam Sheedy talking about when he'd taken over the Tipperary senior team, and one of the things that a lot of the players said about it was that he didn't talk to the players as players. Sorry, he didn't talk to them as people. He talked to them as players. So find out stuff about the players that you have, who their brothers, their sisters, what they're doing in school, different things like that, and that helps to build a bit of rapport. That will be one thing, and certainly doing stuff outside of the sport. Mixed abilities, certainly managing that in your training, having help of other coaches helps that, because you could have a weaker group of 5 or 6 that they're doing the same activity as 5 or 6 that are stronger, but just doing it at a different level, and then everybody is catered for within that. So for me, station-based activity allows for that you're dealing with a particular ability level within your group of 5 or 6, as opposed to a higher level in a different group. So even if there's only 2 coaches you were doing swapping over and back, and that's what I tend to use, is station-based coaching.
There has been coaches. I know there was a number of questions when you were registering for this session tonight, but it would be impossible to go through them all, coaches. And believe it or not, Gerard answered a lot of questions through his presentation there. So I think we'll just leave it at that. It's 10 to 9, and as I say, Gerard has said if there's any issues, you can get in touch with them, whatever. So hopefully we'll see you all again next week for our next session. There's 3 sessions left, coaches, and next week I'm just looking here. Yes, it's a family of games by Terence McWilliams and Gerard Thornton. It's games for children from 4 years of age to 12 years of age. So what session is called Family Games. You can register for the session like we done tonight, and we'll see you all next week.